I think we can start. Welcome everyone. My name is Anna Kacperczyk, and I'm honored to conduct today's celebratory meeting organized by Transdisciplinary Network of Qualitative Research in Poland, TSBJ. First, I welcome our esteemed guests, Carolyn Ellis and Artur Bochner. I welcome the Polish organizers of this meeting, members of the General Council of the Transdisciplinary Network of Qualitative Research, Krzysztof Konecki, Dariusz Kubinowski, Marek Gorzko, and Marcin Kafar. I welcome guests from the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Scotland, Luxembourg, Israel, Poland, and other parts of the world. I'm delighted to see all of you here today with us. And first, I will tell something about Transdisciplinary Network of Qualitative Research. This is an informal organization called to existence in 2012 by Polish scholars Dariusz Kubinowski and Krzysztof Konecki. The main idea of this network was to bring together qualitative researchers from various disciplines of social and human sciences and generally fields of professional practice in Poland. Every year, except during this pandemic time, representatives of sociology, psychology, pedagogy, anthropology, medicine, nursing, social work, marketing, management, and even architecture gathered at the TSBJ Symposia. Our annual meetings create opportunities for mutual learning among sociologists, educators, and scholars from other humanities disciplines. And the idea of this transdisciplinarity includes an invitation to open up dialogue among these disciplines, building conceptual bridges and translating theories and methods from one field to another, stimulating mutual inspiration of these fields. So from the beginning, the reflection of autoethnography as a way of knowledge production and setting up an alternative space for communication within academia was a significant part of our debates, and the names of Carolyn Ellis and Artur Bochner appeared frequently and have been cited in lively discussions during our meetings many times. And today we are gathering here on behalf of this Council of TSBJ to honor these two exceptional scholars, Carolyn Ellis and Artur Bochner, globally recognized as architects of autoethnography, highly distinguished for their accomplishments in communication sciences and narrative inquiry. Of course, it is impossible to present all of their outstanding achievements during this short meeting. However, the most important work should be recalled to introduce our honored guest. Carolyn Ellis is Distinguished Professor Emerita at the University of South Florida, where she worked in the Department of Communication and earlier in the Department of Sociology. Her research and writing situate her work at the intersections of symbolic interactionism, literature, sociocultural analysis, and methodology, with autoethnography as an axis of the quest. Citing Stacy Holman Jones, she focuses on how individuals negotiate identities, emotions, and meaning-making in and through close relationships. Her profound writings explored themes of love, loss, chronic illness, death, grieving. In the most recognizable Final Negotiations, her profound piece include, among others, There Are Survivors, telling a story of sudden death, with Mother with Child, a true story, Take No Chance, Grave Tending with Mother at the Cemetery, or In Heart for Autoethnography. 2004, she published a famous methodological novel about autoethnography, The Ethnographic Eye. In 2009, she wrote Revision, Autoethnographic Reflections on Life and Work. In 2013, we could read her article, Carrying the Torch for Autoethnography. Carolyn Ellis offered us many brilliant thoughts, lively scenes, and deep feelings in her work. But most importantly, she had the courage to write from the bottom of the heart. She was able to name what had been so far unnamed, but only sensed in the world of narrative inquiry. As an essential part of her latest research and reflection is a reflection of knowledge production and the practice of co-constructed and constructed interviewing and collaborative writing. In the articles written with Chris Patty and Jerry Ravitsky, she teaches us how to create interviews when the study participants work on equal terms in collaboration, building dialogic and mutually influential research relationships. Carolyn is the recipient of numerous honors and awards. In 2002, she was honored by the National Communication Association's Ethnography Division Award for Distinguished Publication for her Mother with Child essay. In 2012, she received the Lifetime Achievement Award in Qualitative Inquiry from the International Center for Qualitative Inquiry. In 2013, Legacy Lifetime Award from the NCA Ethnography Division. She has received several teaching honors, including the University of South Florida Outstanding Undergraduate University Teaching Award. Carolyn has also been the subject of Scholars Spotlight panels sponsored by Ethnography and Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction, division of NCA. In 2003, she was invited to present at the State University of New York at Stony Brook Sociology Department's Distinguished Alumni Colloquium. Arthur Bochner is a distinguished professor emeritus at the University of South Florida and a distinguished scholar of the National Communication Association. Author is globally recognized for his theoretical, critical, and empirical contribution to narrative and autoethnographic inquiry. Being interested in communication theory and philosophy of communication, he developed reflexive social science methodologies that bring subjectivity, emotions, and storytelling into the heart of the research process. His highly influential books, articles raise issues of narrative identity, narrative truth, narratives of illness, and memory work. He investigated narratives of aging, particularly the aging of family members. Art is a scholar of international and interdisciplinary reputation. He published over 100 monographs, articles, book chapters, 3 books, 2 edited volumes, and some special issues of academic journals. His publications include, for instance, On Taking Ourselves Seriously, and analysis of some persistent problem of promising directions in personal research, the coercive grip in neutrality. It's about time, narrative, and the divided self, criteria against ourselves, narrative virtues, love survives, and the cycle of chapters in the Sieć Handbook of Interpersonal Communication, perspective on inquiry. In 1985, it was representation, conversation, and reflection. In 1994, theories and stories. In 2002, the moral stories. In his 2014 book, Coming to Narrative, A Personal History of Paradigm Change in the Human Sciences, received the Best Book Award from the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry and the Ethnography Division of the National Communication Association. He has presented numerous keynote lectures, including a symposium on education after 9/11 and the seminar of the arts and narrative inquiry, both at the University of Art and Design in Helsinki, Finland. Artur has served as scholar in residence at many universities: Saginaw Valley State University, University of South Africa, Syracuse University, Old Dominion University, Purdue University, and the University of Texas. Among his numerous awards are the Charles Wahlberg Research Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, Ohio University's Elizabeth Anders Award, Bernard Brommel Award, Samuel Becker Distinguished Service Award. His honors and awards include a spotlight on his scholarship sponsored by the Ethnography Division of the National Communication Association, McKnight Foundation Most Valuable Doctor Mentor Award, and the Speech Communication Association Teachers on Teaching Award for contribution to the philosophy and methodology of teaching, and numerous grants. In the case of Carolyn Ellis and Art Bochner, it's hard to talk about the successes and work of one without mentioning the other. Together, Artur and Carolyn have co-authored and co-edited numerous publications, including Personal Narrative as a Social Approach, Composing Ethnography, Which Way to Turn, Autoethnography, Personal Narrative Reflexivity, Researcher as Subject, Analyzing Analytical Autoethnography, and special issue of Journal of Contemporary Ethnography, Evocative Ethnography, Writing Lies and Telling Stories. And working together, these two scholars, two soulmates, conceive a synergy, something much more than the individual input of each of them, as we will soon in the occasional performative panel. And the best proof for the successful career coupling is establishing an award of the joint names. The Ellis Bochner Autoethnography and Personal Narrative Research Award is given annually by the Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction, affiliate of the National Communication Association, for the best article, essay, or book chapter in autoethnography and personal narrative research. The merit of the two is the creation of worldwide intellectual movement that caused a shift in the methodology of qualitative research and qualitative writing. In their comprehensive text, Carolyn Ellis and Arthur Bochner introduce evocative autoethnography as a methodology and a way of life in the human and social sciences. Their scientific journey was a quest for their personal healing, but it appeared to be a way of healing for the whole qualitative research discipline. Thank you both for this. Now I pass the floor to Professor Krzysztof Konecki.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to read the content of the award. It's a pity that we cannot give the award directly, but at least we can do it on the internet. Then I will read the decision of the General Council of our network. A transdisciplinary network of qualitative researchers in Poland awards Carolyn Ellis and Arthur Bochner with the honorary distinction for special merits in the creation, development, and dissemination of qualitative research and their methodology, with particular emphasis on autoethnography and narrative inquiry. It's signed by the General Council of the Transdisciplinary Network of Qualitative Researchers. Dariusz Kubinowski, Anna Kacperczyk, Marek Gorzko, Marcin Kafar, and me, Krzysztof Konecki. Congratulations. All the best to you. It's a big achievement. Thank you for your input to qualitative research and development of the interpretive inquiry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krzysztof. It's time to give the floor to our honored guests, Carolyn Ellis and Arthur Bochner.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that introduction, and Krzysztof for your acknowledgement of the honorary award. We are indeed honored. We feel, as we might talk a little bit later, special kinship with Poland and with your group in particular. And we are so happy with all you've done to extend qualitative work, and particularly autoethnography, throughout Poland and in the world. So thank you so very much for the acknowledgement. We are just so pleased.
I want to express my gratitude to the Transdisciplinary Network of Qualitative Researchers for this award, and for all those in attendance who answered the call to be here today, our friends from around the world. We've had an awful lot of luck over the last 30 years to be immersed in the qualitative network. We owe a great debt to the people who supported us, the institutional support we gained from the University of South Florida in our publications, with our editor and good friend, Mitchell Allen, who came to Tampa in 1995, 96 with an idea for a book series, and to the 53, I think is the last count, I think that's accurate, the 53 authors who have contributed books that previously were on the margins, very much on the margins of the social sciences, and who really had a great deal to do with the growth of narrative inquiry and autoethnography, and to the many institutions around the world, from New Zealand to Canada, throughout Europe, throughout most English-speaking countries and other countries as well, supported our workshops, and the dozens, even now hundreds of dissertations, theses in so many different countries, way too many to name at this point, who supported our work and who have led to really the explosion of narrative and autoethnographic work around the world. I am grateful to all of you and feel blessed to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I pass the floor to Marcin Kafar.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everybody again. I'm very happy to have an opportunity to moderate this exceptional panel in which my dear friends, Carolyn and Art, together with myself, will present a performative, occasional, as we call it, variant of coming to autoethnography and its consequences. I will try to stimulate the retrospective imagination of our distinguished guests by guiding them to reflect on a few selected events and situations significant, in my opinion, in terms of precipitation of autoethnography in the evocative variant. Moving within this horizon, we will consider the conditions for the constitution of autoethnography and then its dissemination on a global scale, including Poland. The panel is divided into 5 parts, for which a linking idea is a metaphor of moving together. Where did it come from and what does it mean? We'll start from giving the answer to this question in part 1 of the panel, which we titled From Walking Alone to Moving Together, reminding a short story of how Carolyn and Art found each other. We are among autoethnographers, so it may seem quite trivial to say that good autoethnography cannot exist without a good story. I would like to change this perspective a bit by saying good autoethnography cannot exist without an encounter in a deep sense of this term. It always starts with a real encounter, which means being with. It is about the most authentic meeting where people, literally or figuratively, stand in front of each other and feel that they can give themselves something special. This is exactly what happened between Art and Carolyn 30 plus years ago. The context is as follows. It is January 1990. Carolyn is just giving her talk in a business school on the USF campus. She uses notes from which her first autoethnography, Final Negotiations, a story of love, loss, and chronic illness, was later created. Carolyn, on the one hand, acts as someone who is looking for new opportunities to fruitfully practice social sciences. On the other hand, she feels uncertain about the possible reception of what seemed to her to be important, namely humanized sociology.
And that's how we met.
We hear her voice.
I was apprehensive that the faculty there in the business school wouldn't be interested in introspection and emotions. I tried to anticipate their objections to my work. I wondered who this man in the audience asking all these questions could be. They were interesting questions, though I couldn't help think that he was one of those language is everything people. Anyway, I was accustomed to defending myself against the accusation that what I was doing wasn't science. But this guy was coming at me from a whole new angle. Why are you being so defensive about your work as science? He asked. Certainly, it gave me a lot to think about. Besides, I also was fascinated with how good looking he was. Who is this person anyway?
And here is Art's description of the very same scene.
I sat in amazement listening to Carolyn speak. When she mentioned her partner, Gene Weinstein, I couldn't believe it, since his work on altar casting and personal competence had strongly influenced my dissertation research 20 years earlier. Then as she continued, I realized how similar she was to me in the way she described what needed to be done to resurrect the social sciences and make them meaningful. I thought, she's giving my talk. Who is this woman anyway? How could we have been on the same campus for the last 6 years and never met?
Carolyn's impression on what happened next between her and Art is so telling.
Through our work, as well as our personal relationship, our two voices, one more storied, the other more theoretical, gradually began to merge. We found ourselves co-constructing what we wanted from our life together, personally as well as academically. What did it take to move these voices into greater contact with each other? This period of our lives we refer to as moving together.
A metaphor of moving together indicates movement not only in space, but also in time, defining significant places in relation to space, as well as turning points in relation to time. Why don't we go then to part 2 of the panel, which is moving together as co-constructing personal narratives. Carolyn and Art, you both probably agree that a careful reader of your papers will quite easily recognize that very soon after setting off on your journey, you started publishing co-authored texts. I assume that before this happened, there was an in-between space in which your talks were held, and you showed that effect to a wider audience. We've been continuing our conversation for about 13 years, and certainly there are some motives in them of special importance when we think in a mode of turning points and significant places. For instance, what lingered in my memory, Art, was your story ending with the following sentence. It was felt something was in the air. There was silence. I knew that something very important had happened then. End of citation. You commented on a co-constructive narrative you and Carolyn had generated before, and then it was presented during a conference. Art, could you please tell us a little bit about the role of co-constructing personal narratives, or more widely, developing a dialogic attitude, and how it influenced or strengthened the process of constituting evocative autoethnography paradigm?
Well, going far back in my academic history, I'd been highly influenced by the work of Gregory Bateson and the Palo Alto group of systems therapists in the 1970s and early 1980s, and then especially with the British anti-psychiatrist, as he came to be known, R.D. Laing, who had an interesting way of presenting and narrating relationships between people. In having a relationship with a person, imagine Carolyn and I see you, you see me. I see you seeing me. You see me seeing you. I see you seeing me seeing you. You see me seeing you seeing me. From that architecture of interpersonal relations, we came upon a traumatic experience in our personal relationship and decided to apply that through conversation to what became co-constructed narrative, in which we took the event that had occurred between us, and I wrote independently, autonomously, my version of what had happened. And Carolyn autonomously, independently wrote her version of what had happened. And without discussing them, exchanged versions and agreed beforehand that I would take her version and look at it over a weekend, and she would take my version and look at it over the weekend. And then we would each write a response to each other's version, with one qualification. That was, when we came together again, we would discuss them briefly, but agree that we had to together write a single version that we both consented would be a reasonable account of what had happened in our relationship. And thus was born our version of co-constructed narrative.
So that was a way of creating the first co-constructive narrative. Then you published. What was the title of that piece?
I don't know.
There were actually two different versions of it. One published in the Journal of Human Communication Research, and then where was the other? Oh, it was your book on subjectivity,
Right.
Which was then translated actually into a performance ethnography. So that we took the final version that we had and we dramatized it, and interestingly enough, presented it at an academic conference, a meeting of the Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction. And
Which is where the sentences
yeah.
come from that Marcin just mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And mostly, incidentally, we were trying to heal our own relationship. We didn't go into this thinking this was going to be a scholarly publication or a new methodology for social scientists to emulate or apply.
Well, I did. I thought it would be because
as long as I understand what you are talking about, life was in the first place, and then academia was in the second place. That's how you started your work together, right?
that's right. That's a very good
That's
way
fair.
of putting it. But I was very interested in coping and healing and having the best relationship we could possibly have. But I was very interested in coming up with methods that reflected life as lived, that reflected relationships, and taking what we knew about interaction with each other and caring about each other, and taking it to research to make our research more connected to our lives as lived, instead of being so distant from them. So that was the beginning.
That was the beginning, but not the end of the story.
No.
Okay. It seems quite obvious that the dialogic attitude, which is the essence of moving together, of course, needs discovering its own vocabulary, as Richard Rorty would put it. So here is a good point to skip to part 3 of the panel, which is moving together as searching of old ethnographic vocabulary. Our today's meeting gave me a chance to come to some sunken treasures, as it were. There are artifacts I managed to collect while working for several weeks in Carolyn's office at Fowler Avenue, Department of Communication, in 2018. Carolyn gave me a key and said, "Please feel free to use my library and my archive. I trust you." I sat at her desk then, took a lot of notes on my laptop, but also eagerly looked into her vast archives, where now and then I came across amazing documents. For today's occasion, I decided, after consulting with Carolyn and Art, to bring up 2 of them. The first is a partly typed, partly handwritten manuscript from the period of the creation of There Are Survivors, telling a story of a sudden death, which was released in 1993. I assume that at that time, Carolyn was rereading Goffman's Stigma. In the above mentioned note, I read, for instance, history of interests, Goffman, social psych, interpersonal, qual, stories, sociology to communication, capture an episode, don't believe in discipline, had more in common in people here than in my department of sociology, work with students. What is going on here? Communication and sociology. Studied what I observed naturally, was a part of, except fishing community. Close connection of personal and professional selves. Fishing community to emotions in relationship, such as jealousy, loss, and love. Pursue interest in methodology. Get close to. Capture the moment. Interactive interview. The emotional. Try to get methods that are close to lived experience, not that distance us from them. End of citation. Carolyn, could you please be willing to make some comments on those just cited passages? Some of them are quite idiomatic, like capture an episode, accept fishing community, etc. Some of them are prophetic regarding your future vocabulary, close connection of personal and professional self. And one of them is bolded. What is going on here?
Well, Marcin, I love this. I love
Thank you.
that
I love it too. Yeah.
This is so much in your head that he would pick up a document just like he did this one, which to me was a throwaway document, and he would find something of real interest in it. You know, and as he tells you about the comments that are handwritten on the document, I mean, it just kind of takes me back to the beginning of all this, because the piece there, Survivors, was certainly one of the first pieces that I completed, you know, and thought through. So
Carol,
I love
excuse me. I can send you over a picture of those notes, because I suppose you cannot find them anyway. So,
well, I know when we retired and I went to my study at school, I threw away a lot of things. And I know that Mitch is sitting there saying, I told you so, because he, as an archaeologist, said, keep every draft of every paper. Someone will want to look at this. And I said, no, they've got to go. But I did keep quite a bit. But I knew, Marcin, that you had made copies of some of this. And so I may call on you at some point for that. But I just love the image of you looking through all this, what appeared to me to be trash, and finding something so really important.
Thank you.
In terms of some of the things that I wrote on that manuscript, I mean, you really can see how I was thinking at that point. And I want to start with the one that was bolded, which is what is going on here. Because to me, yeah, that was the essential question of sociology. It certainly was for me, and I think it's the essential question of sociology for everybody, or it should be. And then when I moved from sociology to communication, I certainly took that question with me. And that's what every time I start a project, that's the question that I ask myself. So you can see just from these comments that I'm trying to work through a view of my history of interest. So fishing communities, qualitative methods, Goffman, social psychology, relationships, emotions, love, loss, and grief. And I wondered today, as I was looking at this, whether I was trying to find some kind of continuity of my academic self in all this, one thing leading to another. And now, in this piece in particular, what I was moving to was adding myself and my life as subjects of inquiry to what I had done before. And in many ways, my brother's death, which is the topic of this paper, was the stimulating factor that led me to autoethnographic work. That, and then what was also happening at the same time, the dying and death of my partner at that time. So, you know, I was so overwhelmed by what was going on, and I really felt like I needed to find a way to like spend my time trying to think through these issues in my work. And much like Goffman, I wanted to capture an episode, which was another phrase you pulled out. I wanted to capture an episode of life as it just kind of was rolling by. I wanted it to capture it in terms of sociological inquiry, you know, what is going on here. But different from Goffman in at least two ways, I wanted to add myself as an observer and participant and access and show my own emotions, which he didn't seem to be interested in doing. And also different from Goffman, I sought to do work that might help myself and others cope. So I wanted to combine the sociological inquiry with the idea that research could help us live better lives, which led you then to autoethnography in the strict sense of this term. So you needed a proper term to combine all those scattered pieces and put them together. Exactly. Okay. Yes.
And
that's nice.
Did you have anything else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So
go on.
Yeah, so there was a lot going on at this time in the mid 1990s, and Marcin, for those of you who don't know, came over a period of 13 years to the University of South Florida. He sat in on seminars that we held. He also took me up on a point that I made quite emphatically, which was, in the words of Anatole Broyard, conversation is the kiss of life. And so in our many encounters with among the three of us, Marcin participated fully in conversation, trying to get us to talk as much as we could about what influenced us and where we were going with our work. And another key person here was Clifford Geertz and his distinction between experience near and experience far anthropology. And we definitely were trying to move in the direction of experience near, as you can see from virtually all of the work that we've done. And Marcin was very much a part of listening to us, getting us to speak, feeding back to us, and we're grateful for those many, many hours of conversation in our living room in Tampa.
Thank you, and I'm grateful too for your time and for sharing your experiences, extraordinary and ordinary experiences. That was something for me. Thank you, guys.
We hope for more.
Yeah, of course. Okay. But I think having new vocabulary supposedly wouldn't be enough to pave the way to fruitfully practice evocative autoethnography. You too needed to create a kind of institutional support, and you were successful eventually. Here we come to part 4 of the panel, which is moving together as an institutional endeavor. The second sunken treasure coming from Carolyn's archive is an unpublished document titled Interpretive Human Studies at USF, Narrative Inquiry as a Bridge Between Humanities and Social Sciences, which was presented at the annual meeting of Midwest Sociological Society in Illinois on April 7-11, 1993. Its authors, are our today's honorees. They stated there, among others, the University of South Florida has established an institute for interpretive human studies that attempts to provide a substantive and methodological link between social sciences and humanities disciplines. The term interpretive human studies refers to inquiry that attempts to move beyond objects to meanings, and in groping with meanings to focus attention on values, thus affording an opportunity to recover and reclaim the moral importance and imagination of the social sciences. In refiguring the goals of studies of society and culture away from prediction and control toward interpretation and understanding, we attempt to bridge social sciences and humanities in ways that will dissolve worn and unproductive distinction between mind and body, reason and emotion, and object and subject. Our interdisciplinary institute, developed initially by the Department of Sociology and Communication, has provided a firm and a supportive environment for uniting scholars from different academic disciplines with shared research interests. The Institute's membership includes faculty from sociology, communication, history, English, management, public health, biology, philosophy, internal medicine, and education. End of citation. When I read this paper, I clearly recognize the ideological milestone of later narrative inquiry and evocative haute ethnography. Am I right? And if yes, we all would be thankful for sharing with us a sample of your stories relating to your institutional empowerment, bringing a bridge between human and social sciences, leading to a new paradigm, and briefly showing its consequences.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, those were the good old days. The University of South Florida was very generous in its support for the Institute. The document that Marcin read from was a document that we submitted for interdisciplinary support. And we really had a period of 3 to 5 years where we were doing cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary human sciences work, where the audience was composed of students and faculty from all the disciplines that Marcin mentioned. And it was a very inspirational time. I had been heavily influenced by Richard Rorty's critique of the sacred boundaries of autonomous disciplines, I think is the way he put it, and how destructive they were to academic life, and inspired competition over collaboration, and just kind of reinforced the old ways of doing things. And it was an attempt to move away from that model. It was partially successful, not wholly successful in any way. And my fear now, as you look, around the world, and particularly parts of the United States, is that the momentum is in the opposite direction. That's not something we have to get into at this moment, but it's a frightening prospect for me. I do think that it's going to be up to the next generation, the current and next generation, to resist the temptation of power located in individual disciplines. I don't know if you want to add anything. Yeah.
Yeah, just going back to that time period, I mean, you can see why I moved from sociology to communication, because we were really partners in putting together this institute and developing this PhD program. And, you know, I love having some of our students here. Lisa Spinazzola is here and Chris Davis is here. And then some of you who were so important in this development. Ron just joined us, and I would call him out to say that he was very important in developing all of this, as was Chris Poulos and some other folks on here. And our students were amazing. I mean, it was so exciting during that time to have the Institute. We had speakers coming in from all disciplines to speak about narrative and autoethnographic inquiry. We had the best students in the world who were as enthusiastic about what we were doing as we were, and they were extending our ideas and challenging the ideas in the most positive way. And we were doing all this scholarship together, but we were also doing what Art has called living the autoethnographic life together. And so community was ultra important, and supporting and loving each other was so supportive. I mean, it was the most wonderful department where people really cared about each other and worked together and edited each other's papers. It was not all that, the competition was not at the forefront. It was in the background. And in addition to that, we had, you know, the ICQI, the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry, that Norm Denson put together, which still is going on. We just got back from there, actually. We had that, and we would all meet there together and take our work there and talk with other colleagues who were interested in this work. And I know we're going to go kind of to the global area next, but the only other thing I wanted to say is, you know, in addition to institutionally, we were not that into this being discipline oriented. If I go back to my own work, where I was writing about these stories and trying to, you know, kind of knocking on the door of sociology and saying, please let me in. This is sociology, really it is. And I moved away from that with a lot of help from my friends to thinking of myself of the work as like a wheel, and we were kind of in the middle, and the spokes were reaching out everywhere across the world and to people who were interested in the work that we were doing. And so we became very unlocked from a discipline and more interested in talking with people who were as enthusiastic about this work as we were.
Okay, Carolyn,
and that included all our graduate students.
Yeah.
So,
and you go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, just one sentence. Carolyn, you've just answered the question, which way to turn. So now we know which way to turn.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's
and
good.
I remember, Art, you probably remember too, when there was a picture, and on the picture there were two paths, and we were talking about those two paths. And that's, you know, it came to my memory now. And that was 11 years ago in Poland, we held that conversation.
Right.
Yeah, good memories.
Yeah, good memories.
Yeah, and you'll notice too, if you go back to that very gracious introduction to this whole program today, that most of our publications and most of our contacts around the world were with people in other disciplines. My friendship with Mark Freeman, with Ken and Mary Gergen in psychology, and we could go on and list many other people, more recently Jerome in social work. And this was attractive to a lot of other people in a lot of other places who were not so disciplinary bound. And it can be done. Yeah, go ahead, continue, Marcia.
Marcia, you want to move to the last part?
Yeah. Okay, the last part of our panel is called Moving Together as Resuming the Writing Story. Here I would like to, as Carolyn, you did in one of the chapters of revised and expanded edition of Final Negotiations 2019, I would like to encourage the two of you to take a short walk around the world, a wider world of old ethnography as a global, intellectual, social, and transcultural movement. Please use your imagination and tell us some good stories, including Poland in this process of resuming, would be very welcome.
Well, we've been fortunate, as I think Art said, to do workshops around the world and have people from around the world come to visit and give talks, meeting up at various conferences in the US and also around the world, including the one in Poland that we were honored to give keynote talks to. And I guess the story that I want to tell is coming to Poland the second time I came without Art. I came by myself because I was doing research with survivors of the Holocaust, and I was meeting my very, very dear friend Jerry Rawicki, who had been in the Warsaw Ghetto, and he was coming back to Warsaw for the first time since he was a child. He was in his 90s at that point, or about to be 90. He died last year at 94. And so Marcin said that he would come to Warsaw to meet with me there. And I said, okay. And I was trying to videotape with my little camera, Jerry going to the wall and going back to places he remembered and meeting people and talking with people. I'm trying to videotape, and Marcin appeared, and it was a godsend because he took the camera out of my hands and he started videotaping so that I could interact with Jerry and get that on tape. Afterwards, Marcin and I went to my room and sat and talked and videotaped our discussion. And it was an amazing discussion about being with Jerry and what that meant in terms of his story, in terms of forgiveness, in terms of being back in Poland and what that did to his memory and for him in a humane way. And there were lots of tears and laughter and love shared in that room. And I am forever grateful for being in Poland, being able to have that experience, going to Treblinka with Jerry, doing a documentary on Treblinka, and another documentary from being in Warsaw with him, and just the love and care.
Breaking the wall, yeah.
Breaking the wall, yes. And just so thankful for my Polish colleague and everyone that I met there who was so kind to us the two times that I was there, and included us and extended our work. And just thank you so very much.
Thank you. Good memories again.
Yes.
And I guess I can conclude with just one brief story, which has to do with my collaboration with Csaba Osvath, who is Hungarian American scholar, artist. Just like my connection with Carolyn, our relationship started with conversation, with many hours of conversation in our house and in dialogue. And he came to me because he had read a story that I wrote titled Bird on the Wire, Finding the Father Within Me. And he had been estranged from his father for 15 years, had no correspondence from the time he, shortly before he left Poland until he came to the United States, where he completed 2 PhDs, one in liturgy and one in education. He not only did artwork that extended the meanings of what I was trying to get at in that story, but also took pause. And I'm reminded of Foucault's question of how we think about what we think and how we figure out what our work does. What does our work do? Which ought to be an important question for most of us. What does our work do and for whom? And Csaba wrote a letter to his father after reading my story. And like I say, he hadn't talked to his father for 15 years, and he had no idea whether his father would ever return any correspondence. And it took 4 or 5 months, but he got a letter back from his father. And if you're interested in what his father had to say and what he said about that correspondence and the inspiration provided by an evocative, actually fictional autoethnography, Bird on the Wire, you can find it on YouTube under the title Autoethnography and Purified Conversation. And I think, you know, it was very inspiring to me to see how meanings move. It moved from my father's death to my story about the absence of conversation between me and my father, between my father and me prior to his death, which I had always hoped to have, to writing that story, to having others respond to the story, including Csaba, to Csaba's father, and to a final conversation between the two of them. So that question, what does our work do, is one that is very interesting and important to me now. Yes.
Thank you, Art. Just one small comment, because Anna and me, we conducted autoethnography workshops. We did, I know, 5 or 6 of them, Anna. And we used those materials during our workshop. So that succession works in this way as well. So yeah, that's a nice story. That's a nice conclusion. Thank you, Art.
And maybe I would say just a couple more sentences, which is, you know, autoethnography and narrative and this whole interpretive approach is really alive and well. I mean, Art just looked it up, and he reminded me that back in the early 90s, we had looked up autoethnography in Google Scholar and found fewer than 50. And now there are 84,000, more than 84,000 references to autoethnography in Google Scholar, and just conferences being held around the world, including 2 that, you know, we're doing in this coming year. And I think in this day and time of turmoil all across the world, this kind of perspective, which features love and compassion, is more important than ever.
Sure. Okay. I think we are in a good time to wrap up our panel today, but we are certainly not done with our conversation. Art usually say this is only the beginning. Okay, so I treat this conversation and our meeting as the beginning of our conversation here or then. And now I'm passing the floor back to Anna Kasperczyk. Now, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin.
Thank you for exciting and unique conversation. It seems that the trash and treasure stand very close to each other, and sometimes they are the same thing. Most of all, thank you, Carolyn and Art, for accepting the prize and attending our extraordinary meeting. I feel that you make it extraordinary. I want to pass my words of thanks to my colleagues from General Council of TSBJ, Darek Kubinowski, who was taking care about technical part of this meeting. Thank you, Darek. Krzysztof Konecki, absent Marek Gorzko and Marcin Kafar. Finally, thank everyone for participating. This completes the official part of and the recording of our meeting. It was our last point of on our agenda. However, the connection on Zoom will continue until the last person disconnects, which will be taken care by Dariusz Kubinowski. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna, for
Thank you, Anna.
guiding. I stopped the recording at the moment, but the floor is for audience, maybe for spontaneous voices.